The crying had been going on long enough to turn every head on the plane. It rose above the steady hum of the engines, cutting through first-class calm and economy fatigue alike. Sharp and desperate, the sound of a baby who could not be comforted by status or money. Passengers shifted, sighed, and glanced toward the front rows where a well-dressed man sat stiffly, his infant son red-faced and inconsolable in his arms. What no one could have imagined was that before this flight landed, one quiet woman from the back of the cabin would change everything. Not just for the child, but for the man holding him. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that are ready to feel again. The man's name was Thomas Caldwell, a technology millionaire in his early 40s, traveling from New York to Seattle on a last-minute business flight. His life was built on precision, control, and outcomes. Boardrooms bowed to his decisions, markets reacted to his moves, and people rarely challenged him. Yet none of that mattered at 30,000 feet when his 6-month-old son, Elliot, refused to stop crying. Thomas had tried everything he knew. He rocked, pacing the narrow aisle, checked bottles, adjusted blankets. The crying only grew louder, sharper, as if echoing his own buried panic. This was not how Thomas imagined fatherhood. Elliot's mother had died during childbirth, a loss that arrived alongside the baby like a cruel paradox. Thomas threw himself into work after the funeral, convincing himself that providing financially was the same as being present. He hired help, read guides, followed schedules. But grief does not obey planning, and babies do not respond to spreadsheets. Now, under the weight of curious stares and quiet judgment, Thomas felt exposed in a way success had never prepared him for. Several rows back, seated near the window in economy, Rachel Morgan watched the scene unfold. She was a Christian single mother in her early 30s, traveling with a worn carry-on and a heart heavy with its own history. Her daughter was not with her. Lily, age 7, was staying with Rachel's assistant for the week, while Rachel traveled for a job interview she could barely afford to attend. Every dollar mattered. Every risk was calculated. Rachel had learned to live carefully after her husband died in a construction accident 4 years earlier, leaving her with debt, grief, and a child who needed strength she wasn't sure she possessed. Rachel understood the sound of that baby's cry. It was a sound of fear layered over discomfort, of a tiny human overwhelmed by a world too loud and unfamiliar. She also understood the posture of the man holding him. Not arrogance, as some assumed, but helplessness masked by pride. Rachel felt a pull in her chest, the same pull that had guided her through long nights with Lily when exhaustion and love collided. She hesitated. The cabin was tense. Approaching a stranger, especially one surrounded by an invisible bubble of wealth and authority, felt risky. She reminded herself she had nothing extra to give. No title, no money, no power. Then she realized that was exactly why she could. Rachel stood up. She walked slowly up the aisle, steadying herself as the plane vibrated through mild turbulence. Eyes followed her. Assumptions formed and dissolved. She stopped a respectful distance from Thomas, her expression calm, her posture gentle. Without speaking, she gestured softly, asking permission with her presence rather than words. Thomas looked up, surprised, wary, exhausted. He nodded, more out of desperation than certainty. Rachel did something unthinkable in a world obsessed with boundaries. She offered help without expecting recognition. She took Elliot into her arms with practiced ease, holding him close, not tightly, allowing his small body to feel safe without restraint. She moved slowly, rhythmically, her breathing steady. The baby's cries softened, then paused, then faded into hiccuping breaths. The cabin seemed to exhale with him. Within minutes, Elliot slept, his tiny fingers curling into fabric of Rachel's sleeve. Silence fell, not awkward, but reverent. Thomas sat frozen, staring at the woman holding his son, as if witnessing a miracle he did not believe in. Something inside him broke open, not loudly, but deeply. He realized that despite all his resources, he had never learned how to simply be present. Rachel handed Elliot back carefully, ensuring he was settled, then returned to her seat without drama, without seeking thanks. But Thomas could not let the moment pass. After landing, as passengers disembarked, Thomas waited. He watched Rachel gather her things, noticed a frayed edge of her bag, the way she double-checked every pocket. He approached her with humility that felt unfamiliar but necessary. He thanked her, not with formality but sincerity. Rachel smiled, brushing off the praise, explaining that sometimes babies just need calm more than anything else. They spoke briefly. Enough for Thomas to learn Rachel was traveling for a job interview. Enough for Rachel to see the exhaustion behind his tailored suit. They parted ways at the gate, but the encounter stayed with Thomas like a quiet echo. That night, Thomas could not sleep. He replayed the scene, not the embarrassment, but the relief. He realized that for months he had been running from his grief, hiding behind nannies and schedules, afraid that if he slowed down, the pain would catch him. Watching Rachel soothe Elliot had shown him another way, one built not on control, but connection. He reached out the next day. Through the airline's assistance and his own resources, Thomas found Rachel. He did not offer money immediately. He asked about her interview. It had gone poorly. The company wanted someone with more availability, more flexibility than a single mother could promise. Rachel was disappointed, but not surprised. She told him she trusted God to open the right door in time. Thomas listened, truly listened. Over the following weeks, Thomas and Rachel stayed in touch. Slowly, carefully, he learned about Lily, about Rachel's faith, about the quiet resilience required to rebuild a life after loss. Rachel learned about Elliot, about Thomas's fear of failing as a father, about the loneliness wealth had not solved. Their conversations were not transactional. They were human. Thomas did something that changed both their lives. He offered Rachel a position within his company, one designed around her strengths and her responsibilities as a mother, not as charity, but as opportunity, flexible hours, remote work, stability. He made it clear that her compassion on the plane was not the reason for the offer, but the window through which he finally saw her worth. Rachel accepted with gratitude and humility. Her life did not become perfect overnight, but it became steadier. Lily thrived. Thomas began rearranging his priorities, spending evenings with Elliot, learning patience instead of outsourcing it. He attended parenting groups. He slowed down. Years later, Thomas would say that the most important moment of his career did not happen in an office or on a stage, but on a plane, when a stranger chose kindness over comfort. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that small acts can create life-changing ripples, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that celebrate compassion and courage. Before this story ends, leave a comment below sharing what this moment made you feel, or write one word that represents kindness to you, because sometimes the unthinkable is not what breaks the rules, but what heals the world quietly, one human moment at a time.